After Edward and his comrades fight against gluttony that ended with gluttony swallowing them up, the movie continues by showing Van Hohenheim on his way to somewhere. On the way, a woman asks about the photo that Hohenheim is holding and he replies that the photo is of his family. Hohenheim then told her that he had just met his oldest son again after a long separation, and the look on his face implied that Hohenheim was proud of Edward, who had grown into a strong young man and could protect his younger brother without the help of his father. At the same time, suddenly the horse-drawn carriage they were riding on was intercepted by a group of bandits who wanted to rob them. Fortunately, Sig and Izumi Curtis, a husband and wife duo with great martial arts skills, arrived in time to save them. Hohenheim was grateful to the Curtis couple and had no idea that they were the teachers who taught martial arts to Edward and Alphonse. While heading to the inn, Hohenheim realized that Izumi was suffering from a severe illness. Izumi had apparently tried to resurrect her deceased child and managed to open the portal of the truth, just like the Elric brothers. But in the process, Izumi failed and had to sacrifice her limbs, which caused her to be unable to get pregnant again. Knowing that, Hohenheim then healed Izumi, although he claimed that he could not restore the limbs she had sacrificed. He then warned Izumi to be careful because she had opened the portal of the truth, which made her a potential human sacrifice. Hohenheim did not go into detail, and he only mentioned that the promised day would soon be upon them, and if he could not stop it, then this country and everyone in it would perish. In the meantime, Alphonse tried to find information on how to get his brother out of Gluttony's stomach by going to someone called the Father by the homunculus, who was also their creator. When Alphonse and Gluttony were about to head to the Father's place, they didn't realize that Scar and Mei Chang were secretly following them. Elsewhere, Mustang and Lieutenant Hawkeye plan to uncover the truth about the homunculus, who may have complete control over their country. Mustang deliberately brings up the rumor of King Bradley being the homunculus to the military headquarters to learn their reactions to the rumor, hoping to determine who among them could be an ally to confront the homunculus trying to take control of the country. But unexpectedly, King Bradley turned out to be on the scene and scoffed at Mustang for assuming that he was really a homunculus based on an unproven rumor. Meanwhile, Alphonse finally arrived at the homunculus headquarters, which turned out to be located under the central city. Gluttony then introduced Alphonse to the Father, who turned out to have a similar appearance to Van Hohenheim. At the same time, Edward, who was inside Gluttony's stomach, finally found a way to get out of that place after seeing an inscription similar to the one he had seen in the ruins of Xerxes. He plans to create a transmutation circle by using himself to open the portal of the truth so that they can get out of Gluttony's stomach. Although the consequences were that they would all die if Edward failed to transmute, Ling Yao and Envy agreed to follow Edward's plan. Fortunately, Edward finally managed to open the portal of the truth and found Alphonse's soul still trapped inside. But Edward was still unable to free Alphonse's soul until he finally made it out of Gluttony's stomach, along with Envy and Ling Yao. Edward finally reunited with Alphonse, who was at the homunculus headquarters, and was very surprised when he saw the Father, who looked very similar to Van Hohenheim. Meanwhile, the Father, who knew that the Elric brothers were Hohenheim's sons, seemed so happy because it turned out that the Father knew Hohenheim and asked Edward to stay alive and take good care of his body until the day they were waiting for arrived. On the other hand, Ling Yao, who realized that the Father was not human, pointed a sword at him and demanded an explanation for everything that had happened. However, the Father then ordered Gluttony to swallow Ling Yao, as he was completely useless to their grand plan. Upon hearing that, Edward tried to help Ling Yao and prepared to use his alchemy to attack the Father. Surprisingly, neither Edward nor Alphonse could use their alchemy in that place, so Envy could easily take them down. However, the Father apparently abandoned his intention to kill Ling Yao and instead turned him into a homunculus by implanting the Philosopher's Stone into his body. Although Envy explained that not all human bodies can adapt to the power of the Philosopher's Stone and most of them end up dying, Ling Yao had apparently accepted the risk and was happy that he would gain immortality after becoming a homunculus. After the Father implanted the Philosopher's Stone into Ling Yao's body, he called him his greed. As expected by the Father, Ling Yao's body was easily taken over by greed and now lives as the homunculus. Shortly afterward, Scar suddenly appeared on the scene with Mei Chang and immediately launched an attack on the Father and the homunculus. Surprisingly, they both turned out to be able to use the power of alchemy that they had, even though the power did not work against the Father. Realizing that the Father was no match for them, Scar then used his alchemy power to create a diversion so that they could escape from that place. Elsewhere, King Bradley finally confessed to Mustang that he was once an ordinary human who was transformed into a homunculus named Wrath. King Bradley revealed that he was very proud of himself as the homunculus because of the power of the homunculus that surpassed ordinary humans. He also reveals that Mustang has an important role in their big plan, so he will not kill Mustang until the time comes. The next day, Scar tells Mei Chang and the Elric brothers about his older brother's research notes because he assumes that they can beat the Father and thwart their plans by uncovering the secrets of Scar's older brother's notes. Scar explained that his brother was doing research by combining Xing's alchemy with the Aimstress alchemy. However, upon studying the records for some time, neither Mei Chang nor Edward were able to find an answer and uncover the true meaning of the promised day Hohenheim meant. One night, Edward and the others were startled by the appearance of Ling Yao, who looked limp from hunger. Ling Yao then revealed that greed had not completely taken over his body, so it could be said that he was now sharing a body with greed and would take turns taking over Ling Yao's body according to their respective needs. Ling Yao met Edward to convey the important information he got from greed. Ling Yao tells Edward and his comrades that the father plans to open the portal of the truth on the promised day and asks them to stop the plan. After telling them that, Ling Yao's body was suddenly taken away by greed, who refused to provide any further information and left immediately. Shortly afterward, Mei Chang got the idea to arrange the research notes based on the sequence of several words that were repeated on every page in the notebook. After Mei Chang arranged the notes on the floor, they then got an idea of the transmutation circle that made up the map of Amstress. Not only that, every corner of the transmutation circle actually refers to every area in Amstress that was involved in the coup and the civil war, such as Ishval. Upon learning that, Edward then assumed that the military deliberately triggered a war that caused bloodshed in the region in order to cause a large number of human casualties and activate the giant transmutation circle surrounding Amstress. On the other hand, Alphonse realized that there was a region called Briggs that had not received the crest blood on the research record, which indicated that there had not been any bloodshed in that place. Therefore, Edward was determined to prevent any bloodshed that might occur in Briggs in the near future, as well as thwart the father and the homunculus plans. While Edward would go to Briggs to warn them, Alphonse was assigned to seek information about the promised day from Hohenheim. Meanwhile, Scar and Mei Chang would continue to study Scar's older brother's research notes to find clues on how to neutralize the transmutation circle. While Scar and Mei Chang were studying the research notes, they suddenly found a clue behind the notes as well as a way to neutralize the transmutation circle. Sometime later, Edward finally arrived at Briggs and met Major General Olivier Mira Armstrong, who was Alex's older sister. After handing over the letter of introduction written by Alex to Mira, Edward was then shown around by Mira and her bodyguards. Shortly afterward, the Briggs military base was suddenly attacked by one of the homunculus named Sloth. Mira and her soldiers tried to shoot Sloth with various weapons, but none of them were able to injure his body. Mira then took out a combat vehicle and ordered her soldiers to push Sloth's body out of the fort, then doused it with composite fuel, which instantly froze his body in the midst of cold weather and snowfall. After successfully paralyzing Sloth, Mira and Edward are surprised by the arrival of General Raven, who comes to the base with Winry. Edward immediately realized that Winry was being held hostage by Raven because the military had learned of Edward's plan to prevent the bloodshed that would occur in Briggs. Edward became very angry because Raven and the military officials did not hesitate to involve innocent people like Winry to be used as pawns to achieve their goals. Mira and some of her trusted soldiers then took Edward down the tunnel dug by Sloth while telling him that she was relieved as Briggs' commanding officer. Not only that, Mira also said that Raven had told her to move Sloth into the tunnel because the military considered him as part of the secret military operation, rather than a threat that could kill them. Mira then asked about the purpose of Edward's visit to Briggs. Edward immediately explained everything to Mira, including the promised day and the giant transmutation circle surrounding Amstress. Edward told Mira that he planned to stop the homunculus from carving the crest of blood through some sort of bloodshed that would happen in Briggs. Furthermore, he explains that the tunnel is a giant transmutation circle that surrounds Amstress. In the middle of their conversation, a soldier suddenly appeared and informed them that the Drachma had launched an attack on their base. In the meantime, Alphonse finally met his father, who was in Riol. After finally meeting with his father, Alphonse then told Hohenheim about the father, who was very similar to him, and also about Edward's plan to prevent the catastrophe that would occur on the promised day. Since his sons already knew about the promised day and met the father, Hohenheim had no choice but to tell his past. At that time, the young Hohenheim was nicknamed the slave number 23, whose blood was used as experimental material to make homunculus. In the experiment, the homunculus that was created from an entity called the Eye of God was still a black blob but could communicate with humans and had great insight. In gratitude for donating some of his blood, the homunculus then gave him the name Van Hohenheim and all the knowledge from around the world to free him from slavery. Sometime later, Hohenheim, who had become a prominent alchemist, intended to tell the king of Xerxes about the secret of immortality with the help of the homunculus. However, the homunculus instead utilized the opportunity to take over the king's body and killed everyone in Xerxes except Hohenheim. Since the homunculus was created from Hohenheim's blood, he also has the same physical appearance as Hohenheim, or now known as the father. Afterward, the father told Hohenheim that he now had a body that would never die because half of the souls of the Xerxes residents were inside his body, while the other half were inside Hohenheim's body. Upon learning that, Hohenheim felt very guilty for getting so many people killed. Switching to the present, Edward, who was patrolling with greed, was suddenly surprised by the appearance of the homunculus named Pride, who was hiding in Alphonse's body. At the same time, Gluttony arrived at the place and immediately attacked them, along with Pride, who also launched an attack. Surprisingly, Lan Fan, who had gotten the prosthetic arm from Winry, suddenly appeared and helped them by facing Gluttony, while they tried to find Pride's real body. Shortly afterward, Edward finally met King Bradley's adoptive son, Selim, who turned out to be Pride's true form. When Pride was about to attack Edward, Greed arrived at the scene with Ling Yao's bodyguard named Fu, and together they managed to thwart the attack. Concurrently, Hohenheim was also in that place along with Alphonse, who tried to attack Pride from behind. But Pride was able to anticipate the attack and knock out Alphonse. However, it all turned out to have been planned by Hohenheim, who immediately locked up Pride to restrict his movement, although in the process, Alphonse was also locked up with Pride. Shortly afterward, Scar and Mei Chang arrived at the place and informed Edward that they had found a way to neutralize the giant transmutation circle, so Edward and his comrades devised a plan to thwart the father and the homunculus. The next day, Mustang and Mira then carried out their plan to defeat King Bradley and his army, as well as take control of the central city from the military officials who sided with King Bradley. Mustang and his loyal subordinates then carried out a coup by destroying the train carrying King Bradley and his soldiers, and also blew up several armories in the central city to paralyze the soldiers in charge of guarding the city. On the other hand, Mira and her Briggs soldiers attacked the military base in the central city and successfully occupied the largest military base in Amstress. But unexpectedly, Sloth suddenly appeared at the military base and immediately attacked Mira. When Sloth managed to corner Mira, Alex, who had just arrived at the place, immediately punched him to save his older sister. While Alex and Mira were fighting fiercely against Sloth, Edward and the others were seen going through the underground tunnels to find the Philosopher's Stone and the Transmutation Circle. Elsewhere, Pride sends a message to the father by banging on Alphonse's iron helmet. Not long after, Gluttony finally arrived at the place and freed Pride from the confinement created by Hohenheim. However, because Pride had lost a lot of energy, he ended up devouring Gluttony to recharge his energy so that he could carry out his duties in the big plan initiated by the father. At the same time, Edward, Scar, and Mei Chang, who discovered a transmutation circle, were surprised by the appearance of the mannequin soldiers that were once created by General Hekuro. They immediately became overwhelmed when facing the mannequin soldiers, who were very numerous, until finally Mustang and Lieutenant Hawkeye arrived at the place to save them. But after they managed to defeat the mannequin soldiers, Envy then appeared and immediately challenged Mustang to a fight, while revealing to Scar that Mustang was one of the alchemists sent to Ishval to destroy the Ishval soldiers. Mustang, who wanted revenge on Envy for killing Hughes, then launched his strongest attack and succeeded in burning Envy until his body was charred and turned into dust. But surprisingly, Envy survived and turned into a small caterpillar-like serpent with multiple legs and a sucker-like mouth resembling those of lampreys and parasitic flatworms. Even though Envy had lost all his strength and begged Mustang for mercy not to kill him, Mustang, who was filled with rage and revenge, ignored his pleas and tried to burn him to the ground. However, Lieutenant Hawkeye immediately pointed her gun at Mustang and asked him to stop, as he was now consumed by vengeance and hatred. While Mustang and Hawkeye were arguing, Edward seized the opportunity to grab Envy before Mustang could kill the homunculus. Realizing that he was about to make a mistake that he would later regret, Mustang finally apologized to Lieutenant Hawkeye and asked her to lower her gun. Seeing the humans helping each other and reminding each other, Envy felt jealous and decided to destroy himself by removing the Philosopher's Stone from his body. Elsewhere, Hohenheim finally met the father and got into a heated debate with the creator of the homunculus. As part of his grand plan, the father intended to take the 500,000 souls of the Xerxes people inside Hohenheim's body to create the Philosopher's Stone and activate the transmutation circle. But unexpectedly, more than 500,000 souls inside Hohenheim's body had teamed up to fight the father and take revenge on the homunculus for playing with the lives of humans. They succeeded in destroying the physical body of the father, but the homunculus instead turned into a black monster that had many red eyes all over its body. At the headquarters, when the Armstrong siblings were overwhelmed by Sloth, Izumi Curtis and her husband finally arrived and immediately helped them defeat Sloth. After that, Mira received a report from one of her subordinates who informed her that the Briggs soldiers managed to defeat King Bradley's followers and occupy the military headquarters in the central city. However, they could not celebrate the victory because King Bradley suddenly appeared and launched an attack on the Briggs soldiers. At the same time, Ling Yao, who had now united with Greed, finally arrived at the military headquarters and immediately challenged King Bradley to fight with him. Despite Fu's help, Ling Yao still seemed overwhelmed by King Bradley, so Fu intended to blow himself up along with King Bradley, hoping to kill him. With the help of one of Mira's men, Fu managed to stab King Bradley and restrain his movements. However, King Bradley cleverly managed to escape and pushed Fu so that he would not be hit by the bomb explosion. Seeing Fu, who was willing to sacrifice his life to help him, Ling Yao became furious and angrily pushed King Bradley until he fell into the river. Shortly afterward, Pride finally arrived at the father's place and did her job to create a transmutation circle to gather the potential human sacrifices in one place. With the transmutation circle, Edward, Alphonse, and Izumi finally reunited and met the father, whose figure had turned into a black monster. Surprisingly, the Elric brothers also met their father, Hohenheim. who had been swallowed by the father as part of the 500,000 souls of the Xerxes residents. At the same time, King Bradley survived and suddenly appeared in front of Mustang and the others. King Bradley then forced Mustang to transmute to open the portal of the truth so that Mustang could become a potential human sacrifice for their big plan. After transmuting and successfully opening the portal of the truth, Mustang automatically teleported to the place where Edward and the potential human sacrifices were. Because Mustang was forced to open the portal of the truth, he also lost his vision as a consequence of his action. After Mustang's arrival at that place, the human sacrifices needed by the father were finally complete, and he was preparing to create the largest transmutation circle like the one he had created when destroying Xerxes. While Mei Chang and Lieutenant Hawkeye tried to find the whereabouts of Edward and the others, Scar engaged in a fight against King Bradley. Shortly afterward, a solar eclipse finally appeared, which signaled that the promised day that the father and the homunculus had been waiting for had finally arrived. The father then activated the largest transmutation circle ever by absorbing the souls of the inhabitants of Amstress. With the incredible power he gained after absorbing the souls of the humans, the father planned to absorb the divine power to rule the entire world. After obtaining the divine power, the father finally gained a human-like form and even had the power to hold the sun in his hands. Having achieved his goal, the father then tried to kill Edward and the others. But surprisingly, Hohenheim had anticipated this and revealed to the father that he had released more than 500,000 souls of Xerxes residents into the tunnels used as a transmutation circle. Concurrently, all the human souls that had been absorbed by the father suddenly stirred up and put up a fight so that the father was forced to release the souls of the Amstress residents. On the other hand, Scar finally managed to defeat King Bradley with the help of Lan Fen. Scar then activated the transmutation circle contained in his older brother's research notes to neutralize the transmutation circle that had been created by the father. Upon learning that, the father finally came out of hiding to create the Philosopher's Stone by absorbing the souls of those who were nearby. When Hohenheim and the others rushed after the father to stop him, Edward then met Selen to kill Pride who was in his body. After successfully killing Pride, Edward immediately caught up with Hohenheim and the others. However, they soon became overwhelmed after the father created a powerful energy blast, which even severely damaged Alphonse's steel armor body and destroyed Edward's prosthetic arm. As a result of the explosion, Edward became trapped as his arm was impaled on a sharp piece of metal and embedded in a large rock. Seeing this, the father intended to kill Edward and absorb his soul. On the other hand, Alphonse, who knew that his brother was in danger, decided to sacrifice his life to save Edward. Alphonse then performed a transmutation to open the portal of the truth and sacrificed his soul to restore Edward's arm. After his arm was returned intact, Edward then mobilized all his strength to fight the father. Edward managed to take down the father, who was slowly losing his strength due to failing to activate the transmutation circle. Seeing Ling Yao, who was nearby, the father then approached him to take greed from Ling Yao's body. But unexpectedly, Greed apparently refused to obey the father and fought back until finally Greed managed to defeat the father by destroying himself. After being defeated, the father finally returned to his original form when he first met Hohenheim and was absorbed into the portal of the truth. After the battle, Edward decided to perform a transmutation so that he could open the portal of the truth. He then exchanged all his abilities as an alchemist so that he could restore Alphonse's soul and body as he had promised to his brother. The movie ends with Alphonse who's regaining his soul and body perfectly and finally being able to reunite with Edward. Despite losing his ability as a talented alchemist, Edward had no regrets as he finally managed to fulfill his promise to restore his brother's body and soul back to normal. The moral message we can learn from this movie is that true strength and ability come from the determination and effort we have to protect the people we care about. Never give up on achieving all your dreams, because every effort you make to achieve your purposes will not be in vain and will be valuable experiences in your life.